All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Power Lounge. This is your place for authentic conversations from those who have power to share. My name is Amy Vaughn, and I am the owner and Chief Empowerment Officer of Together Digital, a diverse and collaborative community of women who work in digital and choose to share their knowledge, power, and connections. You can learn more about us and join the movement at www.togetherindigital.com. Today, I would love for you all to meet Lynn Yeldell. She is the inspiring Chief Vibe Officer of Seventh Scout, an Austin-based digital marketing company, and a proud top 20 grad from the University of Alabama. She forgot to leave Austin after Hurricane Katrina, and she is so glad that she stayed. Lynn is the current board chair for KUT, KUX, and infuses fun and good vibes into the Seventh Scouts motto, "Be nice, make better." Her journey is a mix of brains, resilience, and spreading good vibes in the Austin community and beyond. Welcome, Lynn. We're so glad to have you here to talk about business and kindness.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this. I went on a little bit of kind of a journaling journey this summer, and I was talking about kind of how I came to Seventh Scout, how I came to be the sole owner. And I was posting on LinkedIn, and Deb from your board,
Yes.
Together Digital, saw the post. We used to work together at Bizarre Voice. And she said,
Wild.
I really want you to, get to know this organization. So first, I want to thank Together Digital for finding me. And I have so enjoyed becoming a member and all the resources that you guys have. Yeah, my summer was talking about some of the journaling of kind of what my path to Seven Scout. I started off here. A friend of mine brought in just to do some contracting on an RFP. And we quickly realized we had been dear friends for quite a while. And we realized that the way that we thought, he was kind of a classically trained web developer, had a background in counseling and teaching. And my background was in finance and really about structures of business and strategy and so forth, and realized we made a great 1-2 punch. So I bought in to half of the agency. We were working out of WeWork. We decided to expand. We hired people and signed a lease in March of 2020. And actually, Mayor Adler was shutting down South by Southwest right as the ink was drying. And it's a 3-year lease. And we were just like, well, this will probably be the most painful thing that Seventh Scout ever goes through. And so we had to move furniture in. And because of the pandemic, they couldn't build out the offices. And we went to Home Depot and we bought tool drawers. We bought everything at IKEA. We put it together ourselves. And because he was just this wonderful, fabulous gay man, found a 1940s phone booth, and he wanted to put it in the office, but his back had been hurting. And so I brought my partner and her son, and his husband came along, and we were moving the phone booth in, and this was May by now. And I noticed he had been dropping weight, and he's like, I just don't have an appetite. I hurt. And he said, do you mind if I ask Dr. Girlfriend a question? And that's what they call my partner. She heads up palliative care over at Baylor College of Medicine. And I said, sure, talk to her. And they have this fun repartee, and they're talking. And then all of a sudden, I realized her face kind of went blank, and they got very serious. And she said, I want you to come in to, my clinic. And we found out very quickly he actually didn't have a back problem. It was stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And we lost him within a year. And that was I was like, I thought the pandemic was the easiest part of that whole year. And that's what I started talking about, what we went through in the isolation and so forth, and kind of trying to find a path forward. So that was a little bit of how I got to know you all, and how I've really found a community of women, maybe a little bit older. I'm 55, who are business owners, but are looking for a way to run and manage their business. I got my MBA. I know all of that part of business, but no one teaches you, like, how do you hold on after a partner dies? Yes. And how do you really have those conversations with clients and so forth? So it's kind of become my passion.
Yeah, no, and I love it because what a legacy that you're kind of leaving in like his memory and his honor, that lesson that you've learned, the very hard, difficult lesson.
Um,
Um, I'm curious, like, gosh, so many things, but I have my questions in front of me, so I'll try to
oh,
stick to them.
yeah.
Obviously, I think your story is so phenomenal, and I think it's such a vulnerable tale to tell. And I love that you share it so frequently and so openly and honestly because it was a hard and difficult time. But I'd love to hear more about your journey thus far. Kind of, you mentioned a background in finance. So kind of how did you get to where you are today? And then we're going to keep exploring more of these topics on kindness.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting because I started in business and was actually, so I was living in New Orleans. Hurricane Katrina happened. My job relocated to Shreveport, and I was like, if I can't go home to New Orleans, I'm not staying in Shreveport. No offense, Shreveport.
Gotcha.
And so I went back to Austin, and really entrepreneurship found me. I was a money manager at UBS. I was sitting for my CFP, made it all through the financial downturn of 2012, and I got called by a startup, and I thought I'd love to work in startups, right? Because I'm in financial services, and clearly I'm just way too cool, and there's way too many rules in financial services. And so I hopped over, and I just loved what I was doing, but then I realized there weren't enough rules. And I think that that's what I've enjoyed about my path into the agency, is that I wasn't classically trained. I
Mhm.
brought more of that business background
Yeah.
to it. And Seventh Scout is a woman-owned, gay-owned agency. We have 10 clients at any one time,
Mhm.
and we only have 5 full-timers. And so that was something that we get really deep with the work that we do with our clients. And I think that's also why the kindness really comes in, is because we don't have a pitch team and then a work team. We are the team.
Yeah.
And we really need to get the trust and the collaboration. I learned in managing money, if people don't feel comfortable and with you, they won't tell you a lot about their personal situations and financial status. They will sit there and give you the answers that they think that you want to hear. And I feel the same. That's just human nature, right? And the same thing happens when we're working in agencies, marketing, and so forth. It's like, no, we need the real conversations, because if not, we can't help you.
Yes, and more to come on that for sure as well, especially as business owners. It's very essential. I
Yeah.
love that you mentioned that you're an accidental entrepreneur. I definitely relate to that, but I came from the creative side.
Oh, yeah.
Coming from the creative side, I was told that creatives couldn't run companies. And so I think for anybody out there who's even kind of tinkering with a notion of starting your own business,
Mhm.
understand that there is no prerequisite for what it takes to be an entrepreneur because it's so many skills. It's a passion, it's an idea, it's a problem you're going to go out into the world and solve with a business.
Yeah.
And the fact that like somebody from finance can run a creative agency, if both can be true, like these
There-
can be true. So I absolutely love that. I also love how business owners can be, our titles can become so much more about what we do versus, and less about what we do, I'm sorry, and more about what we bring to the
Mhm.
organization. So, for example, another thing we share in common are unique titles. Mine is Chief Empowerment Officer, and yours is Chief Vibe. So, tell us a little bit more about how you got this cool Vibe Officer title.
I know. I just had my coffee mug around me too. It's this past May, my team for my birthday gave me a coffee cup, and on it it says Chief Vibe Officer of Seventh Scout, and I just was so giddy. And again, I've always been like growing up, love that, growing up kind of in the professional field, right? We are tied to titles. Are you account manager? Are you the account rep? Are you the sales manager? If you're a manager, are you managing people? There's just so many nuances to titles. They make me giggle at this point in my life. And with my team, I'm like, y'all give yourselves your own title, because what the title is can convey a bit, but I feel they're so limiting. They're like
Exactly.
the abbreviated version of the resume. Like, I'm the owner of Seven Scout. What does that mean?
Right.
Like, what does that mean? And so the Chief Vibe Officer, not only was it the best title I've ever been given, because I do believe that's my strength that I bring to the agency and getting us through those really tough times. But then also, it's my reminder as we're sitting in client meetings and working through Asana and doing this other stuff, that I think we as owners and leaders can default to a bit of micromanaging, a bit of getting out of our lane into other people's lanes. And it's my reminder that my team is really good at what they do. They don't need me to do their jobs as well. They just need me to clear, make space, and allow everybody to work in the best environment possible.
I love it. That's great. I mean, how excruciatingly long would all of our titles be if it actually described what we do? Why are we so tied to these shortened abbreviations, definitions, not even definitions, but words that are supposed to encapsulate all that we bring and all that we do? It's just too much. So we can only just imagine how excruciating long those titles would be. Their signatures would be the entire email. But I think another thing too, that occurred to me as you were speaking was that it reemphasizes your personal brand, which as a business owner, as much as we might not love it, like you are so much a part of, your business as the face of, if you're facing your clients and thought leadership and things like that. And so having kind of that title sort of helps define and shape, like you said, what you kind of bring into every bit of the process.
You dug in deep with that with Carrie. From that clear bomb leadership, that was I giggled the whole time listening to that. She's fabulous. That was a great power lounge.
She is wonderful. Yeah, we'll get the link up to the podcast that she's referring to, with the glitter bomb leadership and Carrie. That was a good one. She just exudes all of that as well. And again, I think it's fun. It's having fun and getting creative with what you're describing and how you're describing it. Even her just calling it glitter bomb leadership, it just makes it that much more enticing to the audience that you want to reach, right? Another positive aspect of a personal brand.
Yeah.
All right, let's start to foray into the aspect of kindness, which I'm super excited about. In the past, what were some instances where cultivating kindness, starting with yourself, as you've kind of stated in some past conversations, played a key role in your entrepreneurial endeavors?
Yeah, I go back and I think it was there's little parts that have probably speckled throughout my life, right? I think that working in financial services, I did better by trying to be open and vulnerable, and our Texan, Brene Brown and all that good stuff. But it kind of came naturally. But I will tell you, the rug really was pulled out from under me when Rhodes passed away. And I alluded to it before, like I know how to run a business. I know how to do that structurally, but there's really nothing out there. And the messages that I was getting from the outside and from looking for support was, well, you're just going to have to work harder now, right? There's two of you now, there's just one. You're going to have to double down on this, that, and the other. And it just felt so overwhelming. I was like, why do we give those messages during the time of really profound, disruption, that our society goes out and goes, well, go more, work harder, work later, work into the weekend. And I realized, I had bought into the agency. The majority of clients were ones that had personal connection with Rhodes. I also come from a strategic planning and financial background. I'm not a web developer or the classically trained marketer. Would anybody still want to stay with us? Does my team want to stay with us? And Seventh Scout is going to look profoundly different. And so, and then the one caveat that the pandemic added, I've been around, as we all have, different people that have been diagnosed with cancer. And the first thing when you tell someone like, well, I've got cancer, the first question they ask is, oh, well, what kind? Right. And then the second one, they go like, oh, I'm so sorry. And you can kind of see this look. When you tell someone that someone has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, that look that comes across their face is neither supportive, which is what Rhodes needed, and nor is it optimistic. And so he chose during his, treatments, he would go down to MD Anderson. He never missed a Zoom call. So the pandemic gave him an amazing to sit back and still be a part of the agency. And so no one ever got to tell him that he wouldn't make it. No one ever got to give him pity, but also no one knew, no one knew what was going on. And so the kindness, I think, comes in to the fact that it was what felt right to me, but it was the scariest decision that I ever did. And what we did is when May came around, I personally called all of my coworkers, and they knew, right, because they had been part of Rhodes. But then the scariest part is I had to call each and every client. I had to tell them, and not a single one of them knew that he was sick, and not a single one of them knew that he was going through treatment. And so I immediately said, contracts go out the window. This is a fundamentally different organization. And I will let you make whatever decision that you want to do moving forward. And I think that that was one of the smartest decisions at that point to have made, was because I put them in that position of choice. And it was like, I'm not going to sue someone or hold someone to a contract if the person that they most identified with, I can't make them happy. And then I said, oh, by the way, we're shutting the agency down. We'll be gone for the entire week of 4th of July, not just like me stepping out. I mean, everybody on my team is having a restorative week. We will not be checking emails. We will not be having client meetings. We will not be working on your account. We will not be doing anything else other than healing. And you lob that out to clients that you have on a monthly retainer, right? And you feel super scared. And every single client came back and said, that is the best decision. And either, if they could, made something like that in their own agency or organization, and also it got tremendous loyalty from them. So I think that that's kind of like the kindness of what is right for your clients, what is right for your team, what is right for your mental health. And also, I have to correct myself. I have to stop saying mental health. It's health, right? Yeah. It's like your spirit and your mind are suffering. Why do we call that? I don't call it arm health if I broke my arm, right? It's like, it's.
I agree. 100% agree. I think one of the things I was thinking of is just that I want to point out is just our unhealthy relationship as Americans with grief. Yeah. Why is it that we feel like we have to just move right on right away and not give ourselves and those around us the time and space to pause through that time, to actually allow for those feelings and emotions? We just like, oh, keep working and work harder. I think that's just so ridiculous. And I think it was so very brave and vulnerable at the same time with what you did. And clearly the brave and vulnerable approach paid it off, you know, in so many ways, because you and the team got hopefully the rest, recovery, time to heal that you needed. But then also you kind of set a standard and a bar for your clients. And now even more so that the clients that you're serving are the kinds of clients that align with your values. And isn't that what we all want at the end of the day?
Yeah, our motto, the be nice, make better, is something that we go back to. And that was being nice, and it did make us better. And when we are onboard new clients now, that wasn't a one-off. In his memory, every single year, we shut the agency down for a year. Yeah. And I also realized we had little things that we set out, and I wanted him to be a little part of it, but here's Rose. Yeah. And all of his favorite things, from Tito's vodka, blow pops, and fabulous glasses. So
I love it. Oh, that's tie. I dig it. For those of you who can't see it because you're on the podcast now, I love it. We'll have to get a picture and post them up with the notes too. I love that. On that note of being nice and make better, can you share the story of how this motto was created within the agency, but also how has it impacted like the broader community?
Yeah, it is. When I first heard it, it honestly, it was like kind of broke my brain. It's like, is that grammatically correct? And how does that work? Like I'm not really sure that that's a proper sentence. But then I went back and I was like, it's so unbelievably simple. And of course we have a little, because we're an agency and you can't see on the podcast, but we have a little be nice, make better placard that we keep here in the office. And it is something that just about every roadblock that we encounter, we can go back to that saying and say, are we being nice right now? Like, who talks about being nice in business? I think we get the luxury of it because, we tell people we may not be for everybody, but we might be for you. And then also, I think it gives us the latitude or something to measure by of, it's kind of scary out there in the world, particularly in marketing, with with budgets being slashed
Yeah.
and with, really hard to attract and retain really good clients,
Mhm.
we are often tempted to go like, oh, somebody came to us and they've got some work. That'd be nice. It'll pay the bills. But
Sure.
let's take a step back. Can we make better? Is this the right thing for the long term for us to be working on? And so I think that the make better part is part of choosing the right clients,
Mhm.
making sure that our services of doing digital marketing, building websites, paid ads, social media, creating content, can we do better than what the existing client's doing for themselves? And that's not
Mhm.
always the case. And sometimes it's scary and it's nice to take a client, but it has
Yeah.
been a good value for us because it retains clients for us longer, because it is very expensive to onboard and go out and attract new business.
Sure is. Sure is. I think a lot of those who are listening right now totally feel all of what you just said.
Yeah.
Um, on the note of kind of the marketing and advertising world, it's pretty full of ego. There's a lot to compete with, having been the product of the child of that industry for so many years. I mean, even from the very beginning, it was never something I jived with. I remember when I was in college, I put the word humble as like one of three words to describe me on my resume. And my creative director at the time, advisor, mentor, whatever you call him, was like, take that off. And I thought, what? Why? And so I'm kind of curious for you, since you're putting that out there in the world, be nice, make better. How
Yeah.
does this idea of putting kindness first come across when you're talking to potential new clients, other agencies, or potential talent?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that whole running of a business, I think that the marketing and specifically the agency world is one of the most bizarre, has some really, really odd things to it. And I will say this is kind of, they're correlated with kindness. I mean, first it's like, there are companies out there that need assistance and help, and there are agencies that can go out and help them. That's not broken. That's universal, and that's stuff that we'll continue to do. But I think it's the structure, and you talk about the ego, that really is broken for me. And I think two examples just off the top of my head are RFPs and
Mm.
hourly billing. There's nothing more ego and
Yeah.
more broken and unkind than both of those. And I would argue to say, not just to the agency, but to the clients as well. If you break down an RFP, first thing that has to happen is that client has to sit down, know that something is wrong, be able to project and guess what they need to solve it,
Mhm.
put a time frame and a budget to it before ever consulting an expert or a person that actually does that for a living.
Right.
What a horrible waste of time.
Ah.
And what a narrow way of thinking of your business. Like, if there's anything unkind, it's having to put together an RFP on the client side.
Mhm.
The most unkind part about it, in the ego part about it, is that that client then goes out and says, for free,
Yeah.
take your agency offline, look at my problem,
Mhm.
solve it in the way that I've asked you to. Please don't bring any of your experience or extra things that you may have learned from other clients that are similar to me that could help solve this problem in a faster, more efficient, but different way. Then go out and give me your pitch. Then we'll come back and bring you to the table several times,
Yep.
ask you lots of questions. We'll make you wait. We'll never let you know exactly how we'll felt. And then we'll pick the lowest person and we'll give them the RFP.
Basically.
Who
Yeah.
does that? Name one industry that
Mm.
pulls that off, right? I just think that is just, if there's any way to kind of encapsulate the most, like, detach from the humanity of both sides of the business,
Yeah.
the kindness that we really need to do of being able to say, I'm here to help. I'm here
Mhm.
to be nice. I'm here to
Right.
be better. Like,
Uh-huh.
it breaks every tenet that, and we've only competed for one RFP. We were asked to compete for it. We won it, and it will never do it again, even though it was successful. Like, no, thank you.
Right. Well, good for you guys for doing that. I think that could be like a whole nother podcast episode and conversation about the
Yeah.
RFP process within agencies. Just having been in that space, I would get pulled into a lot of those. And I got to see a lot behind the curtain as to what amount of time, money, and resources we would put behind these things, only to be led completely astray and
Yeah.
things dragged out for eons, and to be told at the end of the day that this wasn't moving forward. And it was like to the impact of not just dollars, but people's jobs sometimes as well, which is just absolutely infuriating. So yeah, could totally be a whole other conversation.
and,
I'll
and
leave it for now.
tack on hourly billing, right? How many hours is
Please,
going to take you to do this? It has no
please.
respect for, either side of the
Oh,
equation. So I can't wait to
I
listen to that one.
right. I feel like I could get like a whole panel of people for that one. I don't know if there's any one person out there. I mean, there's so many of us that obviously feel that pain, and
Yeah.
how part of the process is really broken. And like you said, it's not nice, and it's not making better. I think that's like the biggest problem. It's like it's not actually making better work, more effective work. It's broken. So why aren't we figuring out about how to fix it? But that forays nicely into our next question, which is that, and you summoned her name a little bit earlier, Clear is Kind.
Yeah.
Obviously a community favorite of ours, author, researcher, and for you, fellow Texas resident, Brene Brown is often quoted saying that as a business owner, you're dealing with a lot of serious twists and turns, as you have shared in your story. How do you approach fostering these genuine conversations with your team and your clients? Because it's not an easy feat. And how has it helped to influence the success of Seventh Scout?
Yeah, it's interesting. On the Slack channel, someone was asking for help with getting access to the disc profile,
Oh,
and
yeah,
on the Together Digital has this great Slack. Listen, I'm such a fangirl,
I
but
love
it's such
it.
a great community of the ask a question, give advice, so forth. And someone was asking for help with disc, right? And I think about all of the things that we've done, the anagrams, that disc and Myers-Briggs and so forth. And it always makes me think is, clear is kind, and that kindness really does rule what we do. But I think that what we've done with Seventh Scout, and really trying to hone in on this, and I think it's applicable to small teams and small agencies, is, but what does that kindness mean to you, Amy? Right? How do you receive kindness?
Right. Mm-hmm.
How do you give kindness? And so our small team has used, I think, two tools in order to be clear, and then in order to be kind. And in order to be kind, I need to know better from my team. We've got 20 somethings, 30 somethings, 40 somethings, 50 somethings. We are just, we've got men, women, ethnic diversity. We don't have a cisgendered white male. And so when people say they need to help me with DEI, I said, that's what I need. But, but every one of us are very, very different in our approach. And so we actually all use an app called Dimensional.
Oh,
It's one of those that kind of, it's free. It's on the phone. You get to take lots of BuzzFeed type like questions, and it comes out with, a lot of the, like, I know this is a surprise, but I'm extroverted. I'm dominating. I'm kind of in between thinking and feeling and sensing and judging.
yeah.
And that stuff I already know about myself. But in order to be kind, I need to know what my team member, how they go on that spectrum. And not everybody can get that openness and that trust to have everyone on your team try to take that test. But I highly encourage for everyone who's trying to lead, even, or even connect with their clients, when you're thinking about kindness and you're thinking about what you're delivering, that's only, it's so much better to start with is, how can someone receive that message?
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that tool has been incredibly helpful to us. And then we also have to run a business and have to get work done. So we don't do anything on hourly basis, right? But we run a tight ship on Asana, any task tracker.
Yes.
And I think that you can't just be the sparkly unicorn, let's all be kind.
Sure.
We have to show how that productivity has really helped out. I think and then the final thing is treat the business as it's a human. And I think that was something that really was helpful about my financial services background. And that was, so many people, when they put together their businesses, they think about like, how do we dissolve the business, right? What happens if things don't work out? And I think it is, if you're with a smaller, company and you have partnerships, when I was managing money, I would tell couples, I was like, I can predict with 100% accuracy what's going to happen in your relationship. And they were like, oh, really? And I was like, yes. I was like, you're either going to break up or die.
Yeah.
And like, well, that was a little bold, but yes. And we early on, we had that opportunity in Seventh Scout to sit there and do some of those clear conversations. And it's very hard to talk about, if something happened to me and Rhodes had the agency, he does not want to run Seventh Scout with a palliative care doctor, right? But you talk about that grief and we walk away from that, but we really do need to think about what is best for the agency, the person that you're working with, the clients, the team, without having those clear, kind conversations, we could have blown up the agency.
Yeah, no. And the other thing that just occurred to me too, it's like, we need to start having the hard conversations before it's actually hard.
Yeah.
Because it makes everything so much easier later on down the line. I mean, it's the same thing when you're planning for your business or for the future of your family life and valuables and, all of that. Easier to have those hard conversations before it gets hard. There's something else I was going to make mention too. Oh, we were going to look up the app, Dimensional app, and share the link in the chat and in the show notes, because I'm sure people are super excited about it. It was called Dimensional, right?
Dimensional. And,
Cool.
and one caveat, do not add someone as a close connection if you don't want to see how your compatibility is in the love area. So
yeah. I mean, so that was one other thing I wanted to mention. I worked at a company once and I thought it was fascinating. I loved it because they introduced me to the Enneagram. I hadn't heard of it yet. I knew Myers-Briggs, I knew DESC. So adding it into the mix was wonderful. But another thing that I found fascinating that like really reemphasizes the point you just made about understanding how others receive, it was the love languages. And so they want to know, like, what are your love languages? Because they want to know and understand in which ways do you receive appreciation? Not love isn't like the non-platonic kind, but like, how do you receive accolades, appreciation, gratitude? Because, if I'm a words of affirmation gal and my boss never does anything but give me an annual bonus because he's a gifts and money guy, I'm like never going to feel appreciated. And I wonder why he doesn't, appreciate me or, care about what I do. It's like, oh, he does. It's just the way he shows it is different.
Right.
So again, love languages. I mean, it shouldn't totally be off the table. You can make it non-platonic. It's all right.
That's perfect. Yeah. And the part, I don't know if I did say it, but to slow down very quickly, the part about dimensional is not only are you, you see who you are, you can see the other person, how they rated on all of these, there's like 80 traits, but then you can look at compare and you can say, with each one individual person, I was like, oh, I had no idea they were so introverted. Oh, I had no idea. Like, I love to go out and have lunches and I love client meetings and so forth. And so our shorthand in Seventh Scout is respect your dots, where your dots are. If you really shouldn't be in a meeting, or if you really should, respect your dots and speak up to that and make space for yourself.
Yes, I think that helps a lot with creating psychological safety and boundaries for people, which a lot of us, who are marginalized tend to struggle with. So that's fantastic. The link is up in the chat, ladies.
Awesome.
And so you can check that out. And then, like I said, we'll include it in the show notes as well. Let's talk a little bit about your journey and trip to Austin, because I think that was obviously kind of interesting and pivotal in your career. After Hurricane Katrina, you relocated to Austin, and as you state, you forgot to leave. How this unexpected journey shape your perspective on resilience, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, Hurricane Katrina. So I was born and raised in New Orleans. I lived uptown. I lived in the French Quarter. It's such a wonderful, dynamic, and amazing city. And we have hurricane season from June-ish all the way through to October-ish. And the year Katrina came in, it was a late August storm. And as a native, what that means to us is we probably already evacuated or were threatened to have to evacuate a few times already. And that weekend, I was actually not in New Orleans. We had a house on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and I was there with some of my college friends because it was the very last weekend that we could get together before
Wow.
everybody's kids went back to school.
Yeah.
And when my mother called, so we all went and we were tracking it, and it was one of those that just intensified. And my mother said, "Are y'all watching the storm?" I said, "No, ma'am, we're drinking margaritas and sitting by the pool, like we do on a girls' weekend."
Right.
And the next morning she called and she said, "What are y'all doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm cleaning a house. I'm making sure that we set the house back up, and thank you for letting me use it." And she said two words that my mother, who always wants to make sure we're responsible and taking care of the house, she said, "Get out." And I was
Wow.
like, she's like, "It's bad." And we motored out that Sunday. And so I evacuated while on vacation. So I had my best flip-flops and didn't
Yeah.
have work papers and
Oh,
so forth. And because I was so distracted during the weekend, I left the evacuation plans to my mother, who's not a big traveler,
sure.
and not a big, tech geek like me and Googling and so forth. And this is back in 2005. And so she made us a reservation that the closest place she could find, which was in Shreveport at kind of a, fine place that accepted dogs, which is where we thought we'd be for the weekend. And we ended up staying there I stayed in Shreveport for almost 3 months.
Wow.
We lost the home in Mississippi. And I laughed that I was staying there, pushing myself to make sure all the beds were made and the linens, and we don't know where the house is now.
Oh, wow.
My house uptown, they call it the sliver by the river because it's been there. It was 150 years old, was fine. And my parents had about 3 feet of water in their house. And, immediately you're like, I want to get home. I want to go see my things. I want to go grab stuff.
Yeah.
And so for those of us who were in evacuating is a privilege. I want to make sure to say that
Yeah.
you have to have money in your hands to go have a place to stay. You have to have a vehicle or a transportation that will get you out of there. When something happens at the end of the month, and people who live paycheck to paycheck don't have resources on a good part of the month and have even less at that time. So for those of us who were outside and did have the privilege of evacuating, we could not get back in. We were mandatorily evacuated. So it was 6 weeks before I could get back to my house.
Yeah.
And for those who could not get out or were displaced, it was a mess. And I think the biggest thing I learned about this was we always like to say, I live every day to the fullest and I know I'm not in control. I am not in control. And, your life can turn in a single day. And we lost so many things that were monetarily insignificant and emotionally very significant. Handwritten recipes, things that you just don't think about, and you realize it's like I say that I'd like to think that I continue to be this way, but that if something happened and people walked in and said, "I'm going to take your house, I'm going to take your cars, I'm going to take your whatever, your stuff," I'd be like, "Well, that was a fun run." It just
Right.
doesn't. It doesn't. That's not who I am. Who I am, I can take with me.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. And that's a very difficult, but I think amazing lesson to take from a very difficult situation.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting because it was before the days of texting, and you want to talk about, learning how to communicate and so forth. It was when we all had flip phones, if you
Yep.
were that lucky, and it was like you'd have to hit 11121 and like use the keypad. It was fascinating. Yeah. Hating myself.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
All right, let's talk about some of the high points in your career as
yeah.
well, because those are just as valuable. But I love that we talk about the difficulties too, because I think that success without strife is such utter BS. I love like digging deep and talking about these, more challenging things and how we grow from them. But You have
Yes.
also been recognized as one of the top 20 women in the University of Alabama's history. And that's super remarkable. How has this recognition influenced your leadership style and your commitment to empowering other women in the workplace?
Oh, thank you. It was very humbling. So University of Alabama had when I recognized was honoring 100 years of women to go to the university, and the list was pretty amazing. Harper Lee from To Kill a Mockingbird went to Alabama,
Oh,
and she was on the list. Really, really amazing. And we got to go back and really celebrate it. And I realized I'm such a different person today. And I think the lessons I learned about being a female leader, I was the first woman that they elected student body president at the University of Alabama. And what I learned from that was I enjoy putting myself into places where I'm not expected.
wow,
Um,
love
and
that.
and I didn't know better at first.
Mhm.
And I really but by doing so, I disrupted a flow that every other SGA leader had gone into some type of Alabama politics.
Yeah.
And here I was not a pre-law major. I wasn't a man, wasn't in a fraternity. And they didn't really know what to do with me. And I would say it helped my confidence in so much in getting that role. But I would also say it was very difficult for me to find that next step forward because recruiting for jobs, being pulled through in that system wasn't available for me like they were for everybody else. And I
Mm.
didn't really realize that until much later. My election was contested.
Oh,
Uh, it made it made a lot of different kind of news and so forth because I don't think they really wanted me there.
yeah.
So, um, and I think it gave me the confidence to show up and to try.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and to know that those things that you did, and I love that I wrote that down and I'm going to save that for later. Showing up in places that you're not expected by
Mhm.
doing those things. It may take a while, but somehow, like when you do that and you make that effort and you step out on that limb, it comes back,
Yeah.
it comes back at some point.
Well, and I want to thank the group that did it. I appreciate it. I think it was significant that it was the first time that the student body had elected a female to be
Yeah.
president. But I think even more brave was the committee in Alabama at a very conservative university because, as who I am today, I'm very public about my ideals of who I am and who I support and what I believe in supporting marriage equality and women's reproductive rights and being a member of the LGBT QIA plus community. There was some bravery from the women who put that on
Yeah.
to invite me to the stage
Mhm.
and to tell my story. And I think that that's something else that needs to happen is we kind of need to remember to there's the Walker rule, which says whenever someone is interviewing, to make sure to include there's a woman, a person of color, or a person from the LGBT community. And I think that should apply not just to hiring, but I think it should be doing to all recognition, just making sure,
Yeah.
just invite them to the table. Doesn't mean you have to hire them. It
Yep.
doesn't mean that you have to give them award, but it's like, did we look a little bit outside of the norm just to see if we can show representation
Right.
in this group of 20 people over
Mm.
100 years?
I love it. That's fantastic. I think that leads nicely into our next question as well. You serve on the board, a couple of different boards like KUT and KUTX, and you bring a unique perspective there. Obviously, how do you advocate for inclusivity and gender diversity in leadership roles? And what
Mhm.
advice do you have for women who are navigating this in their professional lives?
Yeah, this is it's easier as I'm later on in my career. But I do, I feel like there is some balance, right? Between, I talk to people about like, well, why don't you have any people of color on your team? Why don't you have any, this on your team? And they're like, people don't apply. Right. I'm like, well, let's go look at your website and figure out why. Right.
Why
Like,
not?
what signals are you giving out to
Yep.
people? I think like with the work that we do on the KUT board, It's our local NPR station. We have almost the reverse problem, that they have almost too much representation within their four walls and don't know how to show that in a way that's authentic and NPR-y, right? And so I think that it is a delicate balance in both ways. One of the things that you asked about, what advice do I have in women navigating their professional life? I was on the one of the peer groups that Together Digital sets up, and was with a couple of other women yesterday, and they were talking about, and I get it, they were sole practitioners during the pandemic and now trying to get back into the broader workforce, and they're like, my resume isn't fitting what recruiters are looking for because I was contracting, I was doing my own business and so forth, and they want someone who doesn't have gaps. And I do think that looking for jobs is a lot like dating, right? Yeah. Like I really believe that there are organizations out there that we need to be more strategic about supporting them in our applications. Mm-hmm. And I had alluded before the Walker rule. It's an organization. I'll have to find it and send it to you all. But yeah, there's a group of companies that have taken the diversity pledge, and they're the ones who said that they will look for, every time they hire, make sure a woman, make sure this. And I think that it's really important. Like, why aren't we starting with those lists first, right? Why aren't we starting with the organizations that have prioritized women in the workplace? You know, I think the Human Rights Campaign has the Equality Index. And to this day, I will not go to Exxon because they stripped Mobil's domestic partner rights away, and I'll go and support Shell. Yep. I just think that we can very easily feel powerless, and that when we slow down, like, women rule, you know, like we rule in money, we rule in leadership. And we need to continue to go out, support each other. Yes. That's incredibly, I don't know, I watch men do this so easily sometimes. It's not sexist, it's generalizing, right? There's exceptions to every rule. But like, we need to ask each other for help more often. Mm-hmm. And we need to go out and find those organizations that have said, we're looking to prioritize female leadership. Yeah. And, you know, if they happen to be hiring at the same time, gosh, what a trifecta. But don't start on LinkedIn with, like, let's really shove our resources, our time, treasure, and talent, and really support those companies that are going out and asking for us to do so.
I agree. Yeah, it's one of those things that's really interesting. It's almost like the projection that is called quiet quitting. Yeah. When companies don't hold up a certain culture, create psychological safety or flexibility that, either women or other marginalized communities need. It is a you problem. If you don't have people of diverse backgrounds, even reaching out to work for your company, then clearly you're not doing the things that you need to do to attract them. Like you said, through your website, through your job descriptions, through your analysis of their resumes. Like, stop the gap discrimination already. I think it's such an utter BS in this current workforce and climate with the gig economy. Like, it is just the way it is. And honestly, like, holding that against people is so antiquated. It really gets me fired up, as you can tell, because it's a form of discrimination. You're basically not allowing people to have had lives in between work. And I feel like certain people are held to a higher standard, women, when it comes to looking at those gaps.
Well, and women have to pick up those gaps more often.
Yes.
Because the gaps have to do with children, with parents, with health and caring for a partner.
Absolutely. Well, we've got just a few minutes left, and I've got 2 questions left, but I want to just open it up to our live listening audience as well, and let you all know that you absolutely have the chance to chime in through the chat and let us know if you have a question. And then I'm going to go ahead and get through my last few questions.
Sure.
Don't be shy. Drop them in, ladies. And if you don't have one, we'll wrap it. All right. Lynn, actually, I have one more question. Oh my gosh, the pressure's on, live listeners. Give us a question. No, it's all good. Yeah. Actually, I do have one bonus question in mind too.
Oh, good.
Just in case somebody doesn't come around. In your experience, I think we've got a lot of women entrepreneurs listening right now, but how can us female entrepreneurs leverage their unique perspectives and strengths to create a supportive and oh my goodness, empowering workplace culture, because you have done that so brilliantly. What are some tips that you have for them?
Oh, you know, I think it's almost one of those, like, use your gender, but also don't be limited by it. That sounds so simplistic, but it's like, we're entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
right? Like, I think about the struggle with people that were talking about gay marriage. And I'm like, I'm getting married in February, but I'm not getting gay married. I'm getting married. I don't gay part or gay work or gay this. I think sometimes of like reducing that stigma off of you and just say, like, I'm going to put myself in first a group of women entrepreneurs such like this with Together Digital and talk about it. But then, yesterday somebody was talking about in the peer groups, like, but I'm going to put my cloak on right now, and I'm going to walk out, and I'm going to be just an entrepreneur. I am just going to go out and
Yes.
really, leave anything at the door. I think that's helpful for
Yeah.
some people. And for me, I take the perspective, and it may sound simplistic, but I think business is about relationships. And we talk so much about relationships in that personal and romantic way. And I think it's really important for us to think about relationships of who we're doing business in that similar way as well. Like, really, it's like, I want to show up for my partner. I want to show up for my business. I want to, the honeymoon period when you're interviewing with someone, I think we give, like that RFP complaint that I have, I think we give so much to ourselves of like, hire me, hire me, hire me. Like, it shouldn't be that hard. Like,
Mhm.
we're fueling that system,
Yeah.
right? And I get that, it's very difficult to get a job.
Yeah.
Um, and, you have some great podcasts about managing time and so forth. So whatever precious time you have and whatever way that you can manage that time, like if it's sitting there and it's not serving you and you are trying so hard to get recognized,
Mhm.
like, you wouldn't do that to walk into a place and trying to meet a potential romantic partner and just
Right.
keep begging them, right? But please date me because I'm really cool. And like, my friends like me and my past people say I do good work and I really want you to have me. Like, we need to break that system as well.
Absolutely. I agree with you. You're just kind of adding to that mental load. You're increasing that burden before you even walk in the door by putting so much pressure on yourself. I was listening to a Hidden Brain podcast. I think I've
Oh,
referred to it in another episode that
yeah.
talks about healing through narrative psychology and really understanding the impact of the stories we tell ourselves and how it affects us
Mhm.
physically and mentally, both. All right, we didn't get any questions, which is totally fine. You all now Lynn is on our Together Digital Slack. She's joined us as a member, which we're super excited about. So you can always directly message her if you'd like to, or maybe hit her up for a virtual coffee chat. I did have one last question for you, and I'm kind of curious if you've ever been asked something like this. I think it's
Okay.
like this whole like idea of the shrewd business person. So this is the shrewd business Amy asking, Lynn, what is the ROI of kindness? How would you define that? Or what have you seen as the ROI of kindness?
I think that is such a great question, and the answer is happiness over productivity divided. Now, the ROI. I think for me, I look at our day-to-day productivity. Are we getting stuff done? And I look at our turnover, right, of the people that's on our team
Yep,
and the clients that we work with. And
yep,
I really believe that that's our happiness and kindness factor. Because burnout leads to people quitting, quiet quitting.
yep.
It leads to bad work with clients leaving. Clients leave all the time to take work in house. And knock wood, I don't want to jinx myself, but we haven't lost work to another agency.
That's
Uh,
great.
and that to me is a huge factor. If someone builds up their team and takes our work in house, like, that's awesome. Why don't pay us and so forth? But I think that ROI is really is making every day more significant with the team that you have, and
Mhm.
that the clients show up for more.
Yeah.
because you really do make, like who wants to sit and meet with their agency for an hour every 2 weeks? Our clients do. Who wants to
Yeah.
sit and meet with their clients every 2 weeks for an hour? Our team does. It's like, and I think that is that kind of that chief vibe officer. When they said that, I was like, God, that is the coolest thing for them to say to me. But like, time is precious. And for someone to want to work at Seventh Scout and stay here for as long as they have, and for a client to sit there and go through the pandemic and threats of recession and all this upheaval and have the confidence that we're a good agency and that we're easy to work with and we have their best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
know?
love it. You know what? Reputation. You cannot put a price on that.
Mm-mm.
Can't put a price on reputation. And then the cost to acquire new talent and new clients this day and age, absolutely insane. So love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Lynn, we are at time. I'm sure we could keep chatting, but I'm excited. You're in the community, so we're going to keep chatting more. It's been such a pleasure, just spending this hour with you and our listeners. I hope all of you feel encouraged and inspired to go out there and use some kindness and use it to, everyone's benefit. So thanks again for joining us, Lynn.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you, Deb, for introducing me to this awesome group.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot.
All
Bye.
right.
All right. I paused the recording. Thanks, Anna, for your comments.
Oh,
She
yeah.
said, I love the analogy of the relationship and finding clients and applying for a job. I wouldn't beg someone to date me. Why beg someone to work with me? That's so freaking true.
Yes,
That's a LinkedIn
absolutely.
post waiting to happen, as Megan Voges would say.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do we have any non-members that are on listening? Feel free to either raise your hand through the reactions or
And
bring
I'll
your
tell you why she's asking is I get a speaker benefit of a 3-month free membership, and I'd love to pay it forward to you if you're a non-member. Yay! Elena.
Elena was the first one to raise her hand. So
Right.
Elena, send me, you can just DM me your email address and then we'll get you set up with the gifted 3-month membership.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for paying that forward. That was really awesome. Way to live up to the Chief Vibe Officer and kindness message. Again, just live in your brand. I love it.
Well, so happy. And I guess I'll see everybody on Slack or different events in the future.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the week or weekend. We're almost there, y'all. Bye.
Yes. Thanks, Amy.
Bye-bye.